Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from Free State, Colorado. Today, I'm joined by Ian Escalante, Executive Director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. Well, Ian, thank you for joining me, and I hope you are well.
I'm very well, and it's good to be back.
Perfect. Well, it was a crazy election, that's for sure. The headlines are still coming out every day about new appointments in Washington and new fallout from this election. But let's talk about Colorado. Let's talk about gun rights. So many of us here in Colorado depend on our Second Amendment freedoms for hunting, for sport, for self-defense. So, how did this election play out for our Second Amendment rights here in Colorado?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question because it cuts both ways in many different ways. So first off, I want to say that right now we are very likely to dismantle the Democrats' supermajority in the House. We have two highly competitive races. The last two races that are going to decide whether the Democrats keep their supermajority or not are races that were tier one for RMGO. So we could have a very, very large role here if we're able to bring these candidates over the finish line and we dismantle the Democrats' supermajority in the House. Now, unfortunately, we had some losses that night. Proposition KK being the biggest one, 6.5% guns and ammo tax. And unfortunately, RMGO worked very, very hard to block that. We sent out text messages. We had flyers distributed around the state. We printed up thousands of flyers. We took them to gun shops. We made sure they were in people's hands. We made sure that people were distributing these flyers to voters. We were contacting voters directly via text message. We were talking to people on the phone. Unfortunately, the way this cut is almost exactly the way the presidential election cut. Maybe a give or take a couple points. I mean, if you want to scroll back up there on that map, I mean, that map is Colorado's blue wall. That's what I've dubbed it at this point. And it's a combination of Denver, the Denver metro area, right up that little chimney there with Boulder and Larimer County, cuts into northern Colorado, and then it does this weird little diagonal slant down the state. Now, the thing people might ask, well, that's really weird. A lot of times you see certain areas that are blue. So, for example, you go to other states and maybe you'll see areas around major cities that are blue. The thing is that it's important to understand is that that whole little area that kind of snakes down the state is all the ski towns. That's where all the people from California, from the West Coast, have come in. They've invaded our state, and they have decided that because Colorado doesn't have California level taxes yet, and it's pretty, that they're going to make their home here. And they've also decided that they're going to bring their terrible politics with them, and they are going to do their absolute best to ruin, destroy, and suck dry what once was a great state, which once was the pinnacle for what freedom in the American West looks like. So that's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with people in Denver, people in the Denver metro area, people in Boulder, and now what you're seeing is that Denver and Boulder have become so bad that you've seen that contingent kind of expand out throughout the counties in that area. I'm looking really at Jefferson County right there. Jefferson County, 12 years ago, I'm pretty used to live in Jefferson County, right?
Born and raised.
And I'm sure you can attest to this. Jefferson County 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I mean, that was the place to wage war in Colorado. I mean, that's where some of the craziest elections were. And that was really the tipping point for the state for a long time. Now you see Jefferson County voting overwhelmingly for the guns and ammo tax, voting overwhelmingly for Kamala Harris. And that's something that looking forward into future races we really need to reckon with is that unfortunately, these areas are not areas to necessarily wage war anymore. Now, that's not to say that we sit back and say, oh, woe is me, Colorado is lost. We actually need to do the opposite. I think the proof is in the pudding that we made some major gains in other parts of the state. Looking down at Saguache County, down there in the San Luis Valley, I mean, they voted against the guns and ammo tax. They voted for Joe Biden by 14 points, but they voted against the guns and ammo tax. We have two allied gun shops in Saguache County who we distributed flyers to, and we made sure we told them, listen, they're coming after your business. They're coming after our rights. Make sure every single person who steps foot in this store, whether they're a hunter, whether they're a crazy gun nut like you and I, whether they're a sportsman, it doesn't matter. You make sure every single person that comes into this store leaves with a vote no on Proposition KK flyer. That was big. One of the major places that we spent time and effort pushing text messages against Prop KK and other program against Prop KK is Weld County. Weld County voted overwhelmingly against the guns and ammo tax. Douglas County was another one that we worked in, El Paso County. So we really were able to turn those suburban areas against the guns and ammo tax. Now, these are counties, El Paso specifically, and I think Douglas too. I don't remember. A lot of these counties are counties that voted in favor of the Wolf Initiative from a couple years ago. So now what we're seeing is we're seeing those counties realize, okay, these referendum are not good. They're not helping Coloradans. Let's fight back. Let's vote no. Unfortunately, I mean, if you were just to cut out Denver County, Arapahoe County, and Jefferson County, you would probably have seen the guns and ammo tax fail. But unfortunately, those places are so inundated now with leftists that they are pretty much becoming a bulwark of the enemy. Now, I don't want people to get discouraged just yet because there's still a way for us to take back Colorado, but we need to focus our attention and our energy on different areas than we have traditionally over the last 15 years. So I want to get into some of the major legislative wins. Going back to Prop KK real quick, I have a team of expert lawyers right now that are looking over the proposition. They are weighing our odds right now on whether this is something that we can fight. Unfortunately, the 10th Circuit, as we saw with the 21 and under case, the 10th Circuit has been filled up with anti-gun radicals. They've been filled up with complete and utter anti-gun radicals. So we're looking this over. We already have 7 active lawsuits as is, so taking on another one is definitely going to be a heavy lift. But I think this would be worth it. So if you're watching and you really, really are serious about us fighting Proposition KK, I want you to stop what you're doing and go to rmgo.org and donate to our legal fund. Or if you want to make a tax exempt donation, go to the Colorado Project. So you can go to the National Foundation for Gun Rights. You can find the Colorado Project on their website. The Colorado Project is a legal fund that the National Foundation for Gun Rights has specifically set aside to be used in Colorado to fight measures like Proposition KK. On top of that, I actually was sent an email out to our members the other day, and I was saying, what's a favorite politician's day? What's a politician's favorite day of the year? And newsflash, it's not election day. It's not the day that they're sworn in. It's April 15th, because that's the day every year they get to legally steal a bunch of your money. And if you really want to ruin a politician's favorite day, instead of giving the government more money to use against your rights, to use to screw you and to violate your God-given liberties, give that money to the National Foundation for Gun Rights, specifically the Colorado Project. You can write that donation off on your taxes. And instead of that money going to the government, it's going to go to a good cause to defend your rights. Now, I want to get into some of the major wins from the elections and some of the losses aside from Prop KK, specifically talking about the legislature. Um, on the legislative front, as I said, we are right now on the cusp of dismantling the supermajority for Democrats in the House. That would have major ramifications. Over the last 2 sessions specifically, people have been saying, wow, Colorado's really going left in these last two sessions. That can be directly attributed to the Democrats having a supermajority in the House of Representatives. Well, they don't have one in the Senate, they have one in the House. And what that does is it completely frees up that chamber for them to sail anything they want through. Because with the supermajority, they have enough votes to invoke rules that can kill debate, completely stop debate from happening, or limit debate to keep opposition, to keep the conservatives, to keep the people fighting for liberty from running the clock out on the filibuster. So they have been blocking the filibuster. They lose this supermajority. It's going to be a lot more difficult for them to do that because the way they've been selling it is we have a supermajority. All they're going to be doing is obstructing at this point. Now that if they don't have a supermajority anymore, they're actually going to have to work with the Republicans. It's going to go back to the way it was for years before 2020, the 2022 election, where things are going to move a lot slower. They're not going to be able to just ramrod things through like they have the last 2 years. And that is really, really big. The other thing, too, is that a lot of the Democrats in the Colorado General Assembly are bastards. There are some that still have a little bit of a moral compass and will vote against egregious violations to your rights, specifically looking at the assault weapons ban vote from last year. And honestly, looking back, we were able to kill the assault weapons ban. But in hindsight, I'm actually glad that there was a recorded vote taken on the House floor because it forced these people to go on the record and they literally handpicked and handed our targets to us on a silver platter. And that's what we did. We spent a lot of time and money going after those people who voted for the assault weapons ban. So that would be major if we were able to do that. We're 1/3 of the way there with a major victory in your home House district. Mary Young, who is the wife of State Treasurer Dave Young, she's been in office now since about 2019, whenever Dave Young took over as state treasurer, and she has been horrific on all issues. She's been horrible on guns. She's voted for pretty much every piece of gun control that's come in front of her. She has voted really, really bad on a whole lot of other issues. She's voted terrible on personal liberty things. Probably one of the most egregious things she did was she voted to allow heroin addicts to shoot up heroin and do fentanyl right next to a school. And the fact of the matter is that I know we all have our own views on the war on drugs, but I think we can all agree that having this happen, enabling addiction, is bad for society, it's bad for communities, and it's bad for Colorado, especially doing that on the taxpayer's dime. So, I mean, I personally hit her really hard from my other pack, Coloradans for Safer Neighborhoods. RMGO hit her really hard, and eventually we were able to get Ryan Gonzalez, a political newcomer. He ran for office 2 years ago and lost by about 300 votes. This time around, he was able to change up his win margins. He won by 500 votes, and that is, a credit can go all around. I know you had a really big part to play in it. We had a big part to play in it. The House Republican caucus had a big part to play in it. There were a lot of people. This was really an all hands on deck operation to remove Mary Young from a seat that the Democrats have held since at least 2010. I think that they've held this seat or a rendition of this seat going all the way back to the early 2000s. So
Wow.
this is a major, major win for us. We lobbed off someone who is definitely in deep with what I like to call the Polis Mafia. So that was a major, major victory for gun owners, for conservatives, and people who care about liberty across the state. Now, the other two races that we're waging war in right now are House District 19. House District 19 was held by Representative Jennifer Parenti. She voted in favor of the assault weapons ban and saw the handwriting on the wall that she was probably going to lose. She was getting destroyed in fundraising. She was becoming increasingly unpopular. Jennifer Parenti actually went so far as to sponsor a bill to take school resource officers and armed guards out of schools, leaving our children completely defenseless at school. So she came under a lot of fire from that. We put an immense amount of pressure on her during the legislative season. We sent accountability mail in her district. We sent mail to gun owners and we said, Jennifer Parenti is before the vote. We said, she's looking to vote in favor of the assault weapons ban. You need to call her and you need to let her know that we are not going to stand for this. We also did patch through calls in her district. In addition to that, we also worked really hard sending accountability mail, and that level of pressure, along with a bunch of other extraneating factors, caused her to bow out. They replaced her with Jalaire McMillan, who's just a prettier, better spoken Jennifer Parenti. And we threw our support behind former state representative Dan Woog. He was a solid fighter for the Second Amendment while he was in office. He sponsored a bill to repeal red flag gun confiscation. We went to war in that district. We sent mail. We made sure that people knew, despite Jalaire McMillan's friendly appearance and despite her really trying hard to come off as a moderate, she has publicly said that she would support a ban on semi-automatic firearms. So we wanted to make sure the voters of Weld and Eastern Boulder County were made aware of that. Now we have Dan Woog, who is leading her by 238 votes. I'm hoping and praying that tonight we can see a victory and we can see that seat flip to an RMGO endorsed candidate. Another place where we're waging war is down in Colorado Springs, House District 16. Stephanie V. Hill, she has been one of the most radical left representatives on all issues. I mean, not only did she vote for every piece of gun control, she proudly voted for the assault weapons ban, despite admitting that she had gotten constituents who, by the way, we mobilized, who had called her and said, vote no. She said, I'm going to vote yes on it anyway. So she voted yes. And she right now is hanging on to her. She's not even hanging on to her district at this point. She is down by a razor thin margin right now. That race is almost 100% going to a recount. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I really hope we can go ahead and knock her out. Um, One thing that I wanted to mention too is that we also got, our pro-gun champions were resoundingly reelected. Um, you know, Representative Ken DeGraff, Scott Bottoms, Brandy Bradley, Stephanie Luck, Ron Weinberg had a little bit more of a competitive race than I think a lot of us were expecting, but he still handedly won it. Um, they were overwhelmingly reelected, overwhelmingly double digit margins, almost all of them. And then we also had some champions come in open seats. Newly elected Representative Jarvis Caldwell from Monument. He's a former military man. He has spent a lot of time in politics, but he's one of the good ones, and he is going to fight like hell for the Second Amendment. And there's a good chance he ends up on Judiciary Committee. Um, Another one was Representative Larry Don Sukla from the Western Slope. He is someone who sat on the Montezuma County Commission for years. He has been the tip of the spear in fighting back against the eminent domain scheme that the federal government has been trying to do in Western Colorado with the Dolores Monument. He has single-handedly fought that. He is someone who is a cattle rancher. He's a real good, down-to-earth, God-fearing Coloradan who is already asking me how he can go to war for the Second Amendment. He hasn't even been sworn in yet. That's a major win. Another seat that we actually flipped in the state Senate was also in Greeley. Scott Bright replaced Kevin Priola, who was elected as a Republican, switched to a Democrat because of his weird views on the environment. He was okay on guns, but at the end of the day, we want someone who we fully trust in that seat. Scott Bright was that guy. He absolutely destroyed his Democrat opponent in what was expected to be a pretty competitive race. He won by 12 points. That's a huge win. He's going to be a champion. He's relatively new to politics as well. He's an outsider. He's a businessman, and he is not going to be beholden to Bloomberg money or Mom's Demand Action. So that is a very, very big win. for us. Those are all major wins for us across the board. Now, we didn't pick up as many seats as we wanted to. We had some disappointing losses. Matt Burcham in House District 43 was probably the biggest disappointment from election night. Um, Seeing Bob Marshall get reelected was definitely not something I enjoyed, but it was a very close margin. We fought really hard. The Dems trashed Matt Burcham. They made him look like a complete nutcase. They made him look like a terrible person. They pretty much stopped short of saying that he wants to go shoot children in schools. I mean, it was absolutely horrific, the things that they were saying about him. Another big one was Tammy Story. We were really hoping to knock her out this time around, but as I said earlier, Jefferson County is increasingly just moving away from our direction, and that unfortunately is something we're going to have to reckon with at this point. I want to pivot though, real quick before we wrap up, and I want to talk about some really really good signs here in Colorado. Do you mind pulling up the presidential map, presidential county map?
Yeah, not a problem. Let me get back to it here. So here's the presidential electors map here in Colorado this
Yes.
year.
Yeah, so you see, I mean, a familiar shade of blue in all of these counties, the usual suspects. Um, what we're seeing here, though, is yes, we saw the Democrats make some serious gains in counties like Larimer and counties like Jefferson. They also made some gains out in Garfield County. Unfortunately, Garfield County with Glenwood Springs there is becoming um, increasingly more like a mini Breckenridge. But the good thing, or more like a mini Steamboat. But the good thing is that I mean the margins stayed relatively the same to 2020. So the Dems didn't make a whole lot of progress there. But the big ones I want to talk to, I think, the real I think, major shift that we saw came down in Pueblo County. So 2016, Pueblo County votes for President Trump by a razor thin margin, about a point and a half. 2020, Pueblo County moves back in the blue column and votes for Joe Biden by about 2 points. Now we see a drastic shift, about a 4.5 to 5 point shift in favor of Republicans. So now, I mean, realistically, from an RMGO perspective, uh, Larimer County, or not, sorry, not Larimer County, Pueblo County is going to be our ground zero for where we're going to wage war over the next couple election cycles. We have two Democrats there, actually three that two that take up state rep seats, one that holds a state senate seat that encompasses the entire county. Um, we think they're very ripe targets for 2026. We didn't get involved in those races this time around, but looking now at the results, looking now at what we've seen, definitely investing in Pueblo County is a very good idea. We saw even though Democrats were able to hold on to both of those state house seats, we saw shrinking margins there. And I truly believe that in 2026, we can make some serious headway in those seats. And I think that can be really, really good for us.
Wow. Well, that's great analysis, Ian. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'll have to have you back on and talk about what the legislative session might be holding for us here in 2025. But really happy to see that RMGO Super PAC put a lot of effort forward this year. I know you guys spent a lot of money on a lot of these races, and like especially these razor thin ones, like we're seeing in Kelty versus V Hill. Woog, some of these others. I mean, they're really close races. So that extra pack money, the effort that RMGO made, I'm sure made a big difference. So keep up the good fight. I know you have to go here, but what? Any final words?
Yeah, well, Brandon, it's always a pleasure being on here talking to the free people of the Rocky Mountain region. And I just want to say that there are a lot of people, there are some people, unfortunately, who claim to be on our side that are going to try to tell you that RMGO is a scam pack and that we're not doing anything. Um, I want to tell you guys right now, I mean, look at our tracer reports, look at what we did. We have tangible proof. We have seats being won. We have, like I said, unfortunately, Prop KK didn't go our way, but we have anti-gun legislation that's been defeated. So, if you care about the Second Amendment and you care about going to war with the leftists that have been tormenting us in this state for years, go to Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, go to rmgo.org, donate. We're getting around the time for current RMGO members to renew their membership. So if you haven't renewed your membership yet, get on there, renew your membership. It's only $35 a year. And if you really want to make a bigger difference, become a monthly recurring donor. $35 a month, I understand is not, in a tight economy, every penny counts, but I can promise you that every single last red cent of your monthly recurring donations is going to fighting the battle for the Second Amendment. I mean, look, the nation overwhelmingly voted against anti-gun policies. They voted against the woman who was the poster child for the future that Moms Demand Action, Michael Bloomberg, wanted for gun owners. They overwhelmingly voted against that. So now it's time that Colorado catch up with the rest of the country and read the memo. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to give these politicians some literacy lessons so they can read the memo and understand that the people of the United States of America are over, and the people of Colorado are over them trampling all over our rights.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate your time, Ian. Definitely encourage people to become members of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot as the legislative session gets rolling here. A lot to worry about. I'm concerned 2025 could be one of the most radical legislative sessions we've seen in our lifetime with
We'll
these
see.
Democrats. Yeah, so RMGO is going to be very important going forward, of course. So thank you and keep us updated.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.